Yeah, so for our panelists, what we do here, what you can see this little good news shout out little picture. I think 2 years ago or a year back when the Real Estate Club, we started basically starting off every meeting with sharing good news. So that can be anything, I don't know, about an internship that a student got, or an offer, a job offer to some industry, like a scholarship, some industry news. So I'm gonna, in about a minute or two, I'm gonna ask whoever is there yet as students if anybody has some good news to share. That will allow some more students to join in the next like 2 or 3 minutes or so.
Here, I'm going to mute myself. I think my 3-year-old is...
All right, it's 6 o'clock on the dot. I see students come in. I would give them a few more minutes to join our session. I just have sent the link again for everybody in our Real Estate Club member group. So I'm expecting a few more. But maybe this is the time already to start sharing some good news. I know for our panelists as well as for new students or students that are new to the Real Estate Club, this is something that we've been doing for a little bit now, and I really like it. It's a little round of applause for everybody who thinks, this is some really great news. It can be a scholarship or just a super interesting class you're taking, a good book that you're reading, an internship position you scored, an offer, a job offer that was extended to you. Really anything. Some industry news, of course, as well. So I just open the floor. If anybody has something to share, please feel free.
Yeah, I can start. Sorry for joining a little bit late, Sina. It's nice to see everybody here today. I'm actually the president of the Real Estate Club. I've been working a lot with Sina. My name is Alejandro Jimenez. Good news I got this week was that this summer I actually interned at Greystone on their affordable lending team. And I found out this week that I'm going to be able to continue that internship through this and next semester. So I'm really excited to get back to work with them.
That is somehow. Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
I know you told me about it and felt like it was a really good fit for you.
Yeah, really great fit. And I was lucky enough to actually get to be in the office over the summer. So it was a really cool experience to get to meet everybody.
Yeah, that is enhanced internship experiences if you actually get to, meet your coworkers.
Exactly.
Anybody else? Any exciting news? Doesn't have to be as exciting.
Yeah, I guess I got some exciting news. I got a listing. I did an internship at Matthews Real Estate over the summer. Then I started working there full time or part time because of school. Recently got a listing. It's a small deal out in like South Illinois. $416,000, but I got 8 points on it, so kind of happy about that. Hopefully, we're going to keep that going and get some more. But pretty happy about that.
That's great. Fantastic. Well, congrats.
Thanks.
Yeah, awesome news.
That's awesome. All right. It is 6:03, so I think it is time to get started. Welcome, everybody. I know for everybody who can join, I'm recording this, or we are recording this. My name is Sina. I am this year the Vice President of the Real Estate Club. And I would like to welcome you all to our Commercial Real Estate Career Panel. And I also added "and case studies" into the title because all of our speakers are going to actually try to give you a practical example of what they're doing in their daily life. So they're going to be working with an example or trying to work with an example to make it really visual for you. I want to move on to the agenda, which is pretty straightforward. There's going to be a short introduction of the panelists, and then we're going to move on to the main part of tonight, which is going to be the panel's presentation. Each of them, we have 5. We'll have 7 minutes to talk about what is it that they're doing in their career, and maybe a little bit of how they got there, or also what their company is doing. So just a good insight into many different real estate professions for you to see what might be interesting for your future career. We do have an all-female led panel, and I didn't want to waste the opportunity to talk a little bit about women in real estate and maybe some obstacles, some challenges, and how to overcome them. Last but not least is our raffle. It's super exciting. We have a $50 Audible gift card. And in addition, we have a list of book recommendations from our speakers that we will give out, not just to the winner, to everybody attending tonight. So also you can read up on whatever our speakers deem to be a good business book or what has helped them in their career. And then we're going to have an optional short Q&A. You can chat with our speakers and just get some questions off your chest that might have been coming up during the presentation. All right, so this is our lineup for tonight. I'm super excited. I would just give it straight up to Cecily, and please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Sina. Hello, everyone. My name is Cecily Bolding. I'm a wealth strategist at Northern Trust here in Dallas, which is a wealth management firm. I join you in my capacity tonight as a wealth strategist and also as a member of the Crew Dallas and Crew in the Community Board Leadership for 2021. I'm the sponsorship director over each of those board entities. I hold 3 licenses that help me in my career. One is financial planning. Financial planning covers the areas of insurance, education, investments, retirement, tax planning, and estate planning. And I also hold the Series 7, which is a general securities license, and a Series 63, which licenses me in the state of Texas. Look forward to visiting with you all this evening.
Fantastic, thank you. Martina.
Yes, hello. Hi there. My name is Martina Klefker. I'm Senior Vice President at International Capital. I am in charge of the acquisition and disposition of our stabilized properties. And I've been with the company for quite a while. I have over 20 years experience in the commercial real estate sector. I have hold a broker's license and also have a CCIM designation. So commercial real estate is what I specialize on behalf of our mostly foreign investors. International Capital is a commercial real estate brokerage, but really an advisory firm for mostly European and German investors.
Thank you. Nashdi. You are on mute still. And I think
sorry.
Oh, no worries.
We were just talking about how that happens, right? Anyway, hi everyone. My name is Najdi Rafferty, and I'm the founder of Link Commercial Realty. We are a commercial real estate brokerage here in Dallas. I have my JD, but I've always been in the commercial real estate space pretty much after law school. And I've been in the business for over 15 years. And our practice here in Dallas basically is in representing landlords and tenants, as well as doing acquisitions and dispositions. And I do hold a JD and a broker's license in California, Arizona, and also here in Texas, of course.
Impressive, as all of you. Amber, would you like to go next, please?
Yes, of course. I'm Amber Rowe. I'm a senior multifamily mortgage banker at KeyBank, where I've been employed for the last 15 years. I started with them right out of undergrad. I'm also a crew member, like the majority of the women on the panel, and I serve as the university liaison between crew and UTD. And the great part about that is it ended up serving as a springboard for me becoming involved in UTD in other ways. It's definitely a fantastic institution, and I believe very strongly in it. I ended up getting my MBA from UTD in 2019. I also hold the CCIM designation, and I also had the privilege of going through TREC, the Real Estate Council's Associate Leadership Council, which was a really great leadership development program. I highly recommend it for anyone that is going to be staying in the Dallas area. And really, I recommend all these organizations, CREW, CCIM, any credential that you can add to your resume to enhance your experience.
Thank you. That is certainly good advice. Danielle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle Koontz. I'm the Associate Vice President of Strategic Growth for Village Green Management. We are a multifamily management firm that operates nationally from Texas through the East Coast. Like Amber, I am a crew member, also went through the Real Estate Council's ALC program in Dallas, and certainly echo her sentiments that it is an incredible leadership development program if you are planning to stay in the DFW area. I also got my MBA from Auburn University, which really was a springboard for transitioning within multifamily for my career.
Fantastic. Well, let me say it is such an honor to have all of you here tonight. I think we all of the club members, everybody online here, and everybody, probably a few students who are just going to look at their recording, we really want to thank you for being here and spending your time, putting all this effort into, sharing your career and sharing a little bit of an insight into the industry with us. So without further ado, I would say let's get started. Cecily, you are up first. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you're doing every day as a wealth strategist?
I'm happy to. Thank you, Sina. So I think an interesting component of this panel is that we all serve a different client. And so I'm going to start out by telling y'all the client that I serve, which is the individual investor. When I evaluate an investment, I look for potential blind spots in ownership structure and then the eventual disposition of the asset. And then I talk through solutions for the investor to make the investment come to fruition. The categories of blind spots I thought we'd spend some time discussing today are risk and then asset transition. Mm-hmm. From a risk perspective, I look at the ownership structure, how the real estate will be owned, how the property is insured, if this investment will make the individual investor's real estate holdings 15% or greater of their overall wealth. And that's what we consider a concentration. So we try to manage real estate as an asset class below 15%, because what we generally find is that if there's a dip in a specific industry, from a lifestyle and from a planning perspective, if your net worth drops 15% or greater, you really feel that from a lifestyle perspective. So we try to make sure that we're managing around a concentration. Ideally, a diversified portfolio would hold between 4 and 5% in real estate, and our preference is to own it outright. That brings us to disposition. So when you own real estate, or if your family owns real estate, in the event of incapacity or in the event of your passing, someone else is going to inherit that asset. Your appetite, your age, your location, your occupation, your desire to own real estate might be very different from your beneficiaries or from your siblings, depending on how the real estate is owned. And having conversations on the front end that inform your ownership structure can help make for an easier disposition of the asset or division of the asset long term. I have a family that I work with that loves to pool their investments, and they co-own their assets in trust. they were evaluating taking on a real estate project that one family member was particularly gung-ho about because they were a broker, they had skin in the game, they were highly incentivized to advocate for their family to make this investment. But when we took a look at all of the parties who would be receiving the asset in the event that this particular family member passed away, the level of experience wasn't there to be able to invest in this asset class and manage it efficiently longer term. Our appetite is for people to be able to invest in real estate, but to protect their core lifestyle, which is their annual cash flow first, and then use real estate as a diversification strategy, again, owning it outright to the extent they can to be accretive to their wealth structure. Just as a reminder, our client is the individual investor. We take a look over at both risk and asset transition.
Wow, that was so informational. Especially since, we are, well, Martina's going to speak to that, but it's, for me personally, it's a very interesting subject, and I bet a few of the students also find that very interesting. Now, in terms of your career, is there an advice if somebody would also like to be a wealth strategist like you are? What should they do? Is there anything you can give them on hand?
Read as much as you possibly can. Be intellectually curious. Don't be afraid to ask questions if you don't understand a component of a deal, because at a certain point, your questions will lead you to becoming the expert in the room. And clients pay for advice. If you're advising someone, they want you to be an absolute expert in the subject matter they hire you for. So continue your education, obtain the licenses that make you the expert in the room, and stay curious.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Cecily.
My pleasure.
All right, next we have Martina representing the owner.
Yes, the owner. So our company, International Capital, is, functions in a different role than obviously Cecily's company. So we are a commercial real estate brokerage and advisory firm. We were founded here in Dallas in 1979, and in that capacity, we mostly represent European investors with an emphasis on German nationals, simply because that's what most of the executives in our company, that's their original, home, Germany. So we cover the entire spectrum of the commercial real estate sectors. So we deal in office properties, retail properties, office warehouse, flex industrial, and for the last 2 to 3 years also in multifamily. So we represent our clients as brokers and consultants during the acquisition and the disposition of properties, but we also act as property and asset managers during the client's ownership of the real estate. We especially cater to foreign nationals, German-speaking investors, as I said, so who need this US-based all-around representation of their interests from purchase to sale of commercial real estate, because they're absentee owners, they reside in Germany, so they have different requirements and challenges they're facing. So we try to be the conduit for all of it. So I want to talk about a typical acquisition, and I just picked this a CVS pharmacy we just purchased for one of our clients earlier this month. But the steps of the acquisition are pretty much, the process is the same. Of course, what happens in an acquisition or disposition changes, but the process is the same. So this particular client is only interested in ground leases or absolute triple net properties with credit tenants. They're conservative investors, and they're willing to pay relatively low cap rates in exchange for long-term leases with credit tenants in good locations. So our job is to look for suitable properties that match the client's investment criteria with respect to credit of the tenant, length of lease, rent increases, and the quality of the location. And the its potential for long-term viability in the micro and macro real estate market of that particular area. So we use our connections in the commercial brokerage community and direct contacts with developers and other property owners, over relationships we have developed over decades. And we use databases, CoStar, and other commercial real estate marketing sites to find suitable properties for the client. Then we also run financial analysis for them. So we do an after-tax cash flow analysis that the client uses then to make a decision whether to pursue an opportunity and at what price. We're also involved then once we submit an offer for a particular property, starting from the letter of intent. And once the parties have agreed on the basic terms, we work with the client's attorneys on the negotiation of the purchase and sale agreement, where we focus on the proper reflection of the business terms in that PSA. And once the contract has been signed, we guide the due diligence process, and in terms of hiring contractors who do all sorts of property inspections, environmental studies, zoning reports, surveys, and so forth. And at the same time, we compile a due diligence report for the client that also contains comparative market reports for the property type and location. We look at the demographics of the area, of the income and other economic factors in that property's immediate trade area. So we inform the client on a continuous basis of our findings and share all the reports with them. Sometimes we translate them because of certain language barriers, or we do short summaries in German. The attorneys, of course, take over the work on working on the title and survey review of the real estate, and may submit objection letters to the seller and the title company. And so at the end of this process, the client can then make an informed decision if they want to pursue the property and proceed to closing, or if they rather terminate the contract during the inspection period. If the decision is to proceed, we'll be also again the people who assist the client in getting the deal ready for closing and the transfer of ownership. So that's mostly done via a title company. And once the title company then exchanges the ownership, the ownership document against the sales price, we proceed to closing and to closing the transaction. In the case of this CVS here in Miami, the entire process for this transaction was about 10 weeks. That's pretty much an average time limit. Sometimes it's faster because we're in a very tough market right now, and a very much seller's market where sellers can dictate a lot of the terms. And so sometimes they push you into shorter timelines. So, but this was a 10-week deal from submitting the letter of intent to closing. And after the closing, so that's a specialty of what my company also does, we take over the property and asset management on behalf of the client. So we're a tenants only contact. The actual owner is always in the background. So absolute absentee owner. We collect the rent, we report quarterly on any property issues. We do the books of all the properties, the entities, and do all the accounting work. And we're also the liaison between the client and his US CPA firm who does then the client tax returns. So we're this, kind of a niche boutique firm that is this one-stop shop for our overseas clients, and we handle everything for them, from acquisition, property management, accounting, and tax return, to asset management and an annual portfolio evaluation, sell hold recommendations, to an eventual disposition of a property.
Wow, fantastic. I think that was a great overview, really from A to Z. Fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks.
All right, Nashti, tell us something about commercial leasing.
Sure. Thank you, Tina. So A big portion of our work is done in leasing. We represent tenants and landlords. I thought that today I would be discussing the commercial leasing process so you can kind of get an idea of what all that entails. So this will be based on a neighborhood retail shopping center with approximately 17,000 square feet. It was built in 2018 in the city of McKinney, and we were engaged before construction was completed. And typically, leasing a brand new property with 0% occupancy may be more challenging in some respects, but it could also give you and the team that's working on this transaction the opportunity to plan out your leasing strategy from beginning to end. But I should first start out by telling you that when I started learning about leasing early on in my career, I never imagined that the leasing process would have so many layers. I thought it was just a matter of finding, a tenant for vacant spaces that you're trying to lease. How difficult could that be? I quickly learned how wrong I was, because that is not the case at all. It's very many layers of things if you want to have a successful, conclusion to your project. When we were hired to take this project on, we first made sure we understood the landlord's objectives. How long does the landlord want to keep this property? That simple question will impact rental negotiations, leasing strategies, and even capital expenditures. After understanding the landlord's requirements, the next step in our process is basically to understand the retail landscape and what that looks like. We did that by making sure we understood what our current competition was and what retail was about to come into the area. Those are two really important things when you get a project that's a brand new project that is just breaking ground. We analyzed the area demographics, such as the number of households, what residential housing projects are around our subject property, what is the median income, what is the traffic count, and what are the consumer trends and consumer demands. So these are all the things that we have to analyze. All of this information has to be looked at, figuring out the trends and what's most needed in the area before you can actually formulate a leasing strategy. After that, we sort of have to go through the property and identify our best space, which is the prime location in the center. In this situation, considering the size of this project, which wasn't really too large, we decided that the two end caps, the two end units, were the prime location of our property. And the reason we, came to that conclusion was because, in a retail shopping center, the more visibility you have, the more windows you have, and the more light, it makes it a little bit more desirable to be in that space versus an inline space, which is in the middle of the property. So after determining that, we started thinking about putting together a collection of tenants that would create a synergy of different but complementary services in order to create better sales traffic for everyone. So this is really referred to as the highest and best use tenant mix. This is really important when you're trying to lease up space, is that you have to have the right tenant mix for the shopping center to be successful. And I learned that, success of a shopping center really largely depends on how well the tenants are mixed. And instead of waiting for the market to determine how the shopping center would be best shaped, we decided to come up with our own leasing plan of who we would target, what retailers we would go after in order to present the value of our center. So we took advantage of all of our extensive relationships that we had built over the years, knowing all the retailers and their requirements, and basically started reaching out to these different, tenants that we thought were the good tenant mix for our property, and started contacting them. And as any leasing broker will tell you, it's less risky to have a regional or national tenant in your shopping center, because regional and national tenants have corporate backing and less likely to go out of business in situations like the one with which we were recently faced. I mean, the pandemic resulted in shutting down a lot of the smaller tenants. And so it's always really beneficial if you can get a national or regional tenant in your property. And also the other positive aspect of having a national or regional tenant is that the resale value of your shopping center goes up because that is considered a strong tenant. At the end of this project, we were able to secure 4 of the 5 spaces in approximately a 9-month period. And after the second tenant came in, we realized that the center would do well with services that were geared towards women. So we ultimately were able to obtain a national tenant in one of our end caps, which also gave us that strong tenant that we had really hoped to get. The only hiccup was this last space, which was also a end unit or an end cap. And we had lots of tenants that were approaching us wanting to go in that space because it was actually a very nice space. But we knew that because of all the employees that are working in that shopping center, it would be to our benefit and to all the tenants' benefits if we could get a food service or something that was a restaurant or anything that basically would provide the people who are working in that center with the ability to have something there so they could eat without having to leave the property. So we ended up turning a lot of the other non-food tenants away until we finally were able to lease it to a restaurant, which was a great decision, even though it took us a bit longer to get it filled in, but it was actually probably a very smart decision on both our part, and we were able to educate our landlord and let them know that this would probably be the best option in the long run, and it worked out really well. So that's kind of how it happened. The last really part of the leasing process is the effective use of negotiation techniques to secure your tenants. And I guess my recommendation always to my team is you have to think about what you can do to get the other parties what they need so that you can get what you want out of the transaction. And you also have to consider what happens if the agreement is not basically concluded or signed. So those are the things always to have in the back of your mind at the end when you're trying to negotiate, to basically make sure that you're getting, what you want, but they're also getting something that they want. So this was kind of a fast and simplified explanation of the leasing process. It's really very similar to acquisitions and dispositions. We do have letters of intent. We do go through negotiating a lease agreement, and then through the closing and so forth. So this was kind of my process to tell you a little bit more about leasing.
Thank you, Nashti. I think that was a great overview for students. Anybody interested in, leasing brokerage is often what students consider to, first, put their toes in if you're not sure you want to go into brokerage or not. And I think this helped out, hopefully, a lot of students. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
All right, Amber.
Thank you, Sina. So I chose a deal that was publicly featured to be included as a brief case study. But before I dive into that, I thought I'd take just a brief step back and kind of explain what is multifamily. So as you've learned in your real estate classes, you've got your core real estate product types: retail, office, hospitality, multifamily, industrial. So within multifamily is a very diverse product group. You've got conventional apartments that are just your regular apartment buildings. You've got student housing, which is specialty housing that is located adjacent to campus, but not a dormitory. Some of these student housing properties now look way nicer than the apartments I lived in before I bought my house. Manufactured housing is what some people might call like a trailer community or a manufactured housing community. We lend on the actual dirt. The homes themselves are not part of our collateral. Affordable housing is a very specific specialty type where you might have light tech housing or a HAP contract. Certain it can become very complex, and we have a dedicated team that focuses on affordable housing. Seniors housing is also very complex. You've got independent living, Alzheimer's, age restricted, so it can vary there. And then mixed use, we also consider under the multifamily umbrella, as long as the residential component is the bulk of the source of EGI, or effective gross income, for the property. Now you have kind of an idea of the scope of multifamily. So with multifamily, there's a lot of different types of ways you can finance these properties. And I am with a bank, Key Bank. Now, when you think of a bank, you think of like a traditional loan a lot of times, like a balance sheet loan, construction loan, bridge loan, term loan. But I focus on the capital market side. So many of these deals are securitized, or they're special programs. It includes agency financing. You see Fannie and Freddie at the bottom of that graphic there. So Fannie and Freddie, we call them GSEs. They're sponsored, they were authorized by Congress. Fannie's a little bit older than Freddie. Freddie, I think, was authorized in the 70s. Both of those organizations came under conservatorship during the downturn around, I think it was September of 2008 it happened. And it kind of changed the dynamic of how the companies operated. There is still, I mean, the mandate is to provide liquidity in the multifamily market and in the residential market. There's a single family division of Fannie and Freddie, and then there's a multifamily division. The multifamily division is very robust, does a really great job of promoting liquidity. And I thought it froze some of the, sorry, I got distracted. I was concerned that the cameras froze. But so we can do agency financing for these. HUD is a division of the government, Housing and Urban Development. And we can also do HUD loans. 223Fs are refinances. 221D4s are new construction. There's other programs within HUD that I'm not mentioning. CMBS, I'm sure you guys have all heard of. That's another securitized execution. CMBS for multifamily tends to not be as popular. The bulk of the loans are getting done through Fannie and Freddie, just given the leverage and the pricing. Fannie and Freddie give preferential pricing to deals that are offering affordability. What that means is, it may not be a LIHTC deal or a deal with a HAP contract, but it has rents at 80% of area median income, so they're more affordable to tenants. And there's a pricing benefit for that, because the goal is to encourage affordable housing. Investor placement is kind of when we're acting in a brokerage capacity to clear the market and place a loan with a particular investor. The deal that is shown above is one of those examples. And debt fund is kind of similar to that in that scope, where debt fund loans are securitized in the CLO market, and there's generally a day one funding, and then there's oftentimes a future funding. And those loans are for assets that are in transition. It could be a deal that just was constructed and it's going through lease up, or it could be a deal that someone is buying today and they plan to put a certain number of capital improvements into the property before they refinance. And the exit strategy is typically a Fannie or Freddie refinance. So that gives you kind of an overview. There's a lot of different debt programs. When you're working in this field, you have to really be an expert in the different property types and the different executions. Because if someone comes to you with a manufactured housing deal, that's going to be very, very different than a conventional apartment deal in terms of how you underwrite replacement reserves and the management fee and how income is calculated and how it's sensitized. So it's a really fun career working as a lender. I really love working on the securitized off balance sheet side. And I'm sure, my teammates that work on the balance sheet side would agree with me in saying that when you're a lender, you are constantly learning. There's always new problems and you're always seeing new approaches. And that's why experience is very valuable, because you may sometimes run into an issue and then you think, 10 years ago, I saw something not exactly like this, but kind of like this. And this is the solution that we proposed to get through it. Because every loan has challenges that have to be figured out. Now, I'll talk really briefly on the press release. I'm not going to deviate too much from what was publicized, but this is a deal that was in Garland, larger apartment community. It was older vintage, built in 1983. So the goal that the sponsor had was to acquire the property and then put additional CapEx dollars in to execute on a value add program and then later refinance. So that was an example of an investor placement loan where I placed that with an investor who is the end lender. But I mean, all I can say is I love all the different careers that were presented today, and lending is definitely something that I have a great time with, and I think it's a great career and stepping stone really for anybody in commercial real estate. You can always go on to do something else, and having a lending background really prepares you for a variety of different careers.
Thank you, Amber. I think that's really helpful advice. I think if you're done with your undergrad or even you're done with your graduate degree and oh, the real estate industry sounds good, but there is literally so many different professions, so many asset types that it may be really hard to pick. And if you say lending, is a good stepping stone, and you can do a lot after, if you don't necessarily love it like you do, I think that's very helpful. Thank you. All right, last but certainly not least, Danielle.
I think Amber teed up very perfectly the definition of multifamily, because multifamily is the space in which I work. And so at our management company, we are unique in that there are many groups that own the real estate and also manage it. And in our situation, our case, we do not own the real estate. So we are essentially a third-party consultant for the ownership group that represents sort of the day-to-day operations of traditional apartment buildings. And so we really have three customers. Internally, we have our associates who are our customers, and externally, we have both the clients and the residents in which we serve. And so tonight, I'm going to talk about our clients as our customer, so the owners of the properties in which we manage. And my role is really to expand our client base by adding new client customers, new client owners to our portfolio, but also growing the portfolio of assets that our current customers own. And so I'm going to use an example of a property that we're currently managing in DFW called Shoreview Flats. And this is a great example because we have been involved in the process really from start to finish, and we are about to execute on this client's investment strategy. So in 2018, they approached us with really the pre-development of this project and said, here are the plans we have from the architect. Here's what we think the rents are going to be when we deliver this building in 2 years. Help us understand who you think the renter is going to be. Looking at the architecture plans, are there any blind spots that we have, any programming or design functions that you see that should be different before we start construction? So we are a partner with them in that. And then as construction is underway, our job is really to start building momentum for that community. So building awareness. In this particular case, some of you may be familiar with White Rock Lake. This property is very close to the lake on the corner of Shoreview and Ferndale. But what's interesting is, although White Rock Lake is an incredible destination in Dallas, there are not many multifamily buildings around the lake. And so one of the challenges that we had was really overcoming a reputation of most of the multifamily buildings in that area are of 70s and 80s vintage, so a very different product type than something that's brand new. Or there's a ton of single family homes. So how do we bring awareness to the renter demographic that there is now a product that rivals what exists in uptown or downtown, some of the core Dallas neighborhoods, in a slightly different location? So we worked through that process through basically end of 19 through July of 2021. And our role in the day-to-day operations, when you think about apartment buildings, we are kind of the face of that community. So we're responsible for leasing the apartments, kind of being the first introduction to the community, getting those residents to commit to renting there, and then also collecting the rent, working on the lease negotiations, and then servicing the apartments from a facilities and maintenance standpoint. So that is really where our interaction with the client and interaction with or the owner and the resident really interact. So we've got a very fine line to walk between how do we make the resident happy with their experience while also getting the highest revenue possible for the owner. And in this particular case, the owner's investment goal was essentially to stabilize the deal and sell it. And so right now we are in that process. The seller selected JLL as a brokerage. So we've been working with JLL for the past few months to understand the ins and outs of the property. They go through a full marketing process with financials and photos, and we are really involved in partnering with them to be available for every tour that a potential buyer takes of the property, kind of showing them around and talking about what opportunities exist post stabilization to either reduce expenses or increase revenue. And they're currently in the due diligence phase. They're under contract for sale, and our role in the due diligence is really to make the property available to that potential buyer. So there's a lease file audit that we help with. There are many physical inspections of both the units and the exterior of the property, foundation work, roofing. We work with all of those third-party contractors as they put together the package to present to the potential buyer. Yes, we think this is a good investment, or no, it is not. And so kind of going back to the future a little bit for Amber's section, during this process, the buyer is going to be working with Amber or a similar bank to be looking at financing for the property. And so many times those lenders have questions for the property management group to validate or verify a lot of the information that they're seeing presented from the potential buyer. And so we're providing that information as well. But really, we can be a partner as soon as they're considering the development through the execution of their investment strategy, which ultimately is the sale.
Thank you, Danielle. I think for me, that was one of the biggest takeaways, is that property management should not and is not an afterthought, but really you can come in at the beginning and advise on what the tenants need in a particular market. I hope a lot of students found that interesting too. And well, I want to thank at this point all of our speakers again. I think those were really, really informative, short little sessions. And we're moving on. Our panel tonight is deliberately all female led. The real estate industry has been going through some transition, but maybe we're not quite there yet. What I mean by that is that I would just like this opportunity to really ask for the experiences of our speakers tonight and maybe some advice that they have for female students, but also for male students on how the industry is, well, how the industry is moving forward. Let's use the same order we had before. So Cecily, would you like to start us off?
I'm happy to, and I'm sorry I lost connection for just a moment. So you want us to share experiences and advice for both male and female students who are pursuing a career in commercial real estate, correct?
Correct.
Well, I would say, and this is a shameless plug for Crew, but I would say make sure to build a network where you can be inquisitive, where you can build partnerships. I think every presenter tonight not only mentioned the client they serve, but the other advisors they partner alongside. Building those peer advisor relationships is really accretive, not only to your client, but your professional development too. So be friendly, be curious. reach out and make connections with others. I've found Crew to be a really welcoming platform to foster those connections well. A couple other real estate specific organizations were mentioned, and I think Amber and maybe Najdi will touch on those others as well. But the advice I would have is just pick a mentor, pick someone in a space that you find interesting, a dynamic leader that you want to learn from, and ask their advice on how to pursue a career in the field, not necessarily in the space where you start. Because Amber made a really great point. I started in commercial lending, having the ability to analyze financial statements, understanding why when you underwrite someone would say no to a deal makes you more powerful when you're advocating for a yes. So find a teacher that's going to teach you, find a mentor that's going to coach you, build those peer relationships. And I would say, male or female, find your vintage, find the class of people that you start with that you want to grow in leadership with, and start building relationships, refine one another, and just build each other up and share experiences with one another. That'd be my advice.
Thank you. Martina.
Well, those were really good points that Cecily had. I mean, I can second all of those. I think, as you said, we're not quite there yet, but I think it's a societal issue. It's not only a commercial real estate issue at the end of the day. Things have certainly changed over the last decades, that more and more women are represented in leadership roles in commercial real estate. And I mean, from my own experience, I can say, or can second what Cecily said, it's find a mentor, somebody who is on your side and that you can lean on and mostly learn from. But also project confidence, don't be timid, don't be shy, talk back, don't take, I'm sorry, don't take BS, it's the truth, sometimes, especially when we're younger and starting a career, we get intimidated and we think it's not our place to talk or to talk back or to disagree. Well, do disagree, voice your opinion, be nice, be friendly, be courteous about it, but stand your ground but be an expert, be somebody who has a reputation not only for being opinionated, but also for being somebody who knows what she's talking about. Or, the same thing for men. It's really, men have the same issues and on a different level, but be an expert in something and don't let people talk over you or shush you or something like that. So, and I think the networks are very important, and like-minded people you can lean on.
Thank you, Martina. I absolutely second that as well.
Yeah.
All right. Najdi, do you have?
So I have to say that I agree with both Cecily and Martina and everything they said. The real estate industry is still more of a man's industry because there's just more male figures running things and, in top positions than women, unfortunately. But it has changed. It has changed a lot since even the last decade. So I'm happy that there's more of an equality in that in the commercial, space that I'm in. But if I were to give my younger self some advice, I would tell everybody on, listening tonight is that, when you start in a company, you're basically bombarded with all sorts of information. So again, I think it's crucial to, even though you feel like you may not know everything, to be curious, to ask questions and not to feel afraid that if you ask a question, it might seem like you're not understanding the whole picture. So that was kind of what I felt like when I was starting out way back, when I first started out. So I think that the most important advice I could give is, don't be afraid, ask questions. It doesn't matter what other people think of your questions. And also I think in our space, networking is key. You have to know people, different types of people and different organizations that you can, learn from, and you can, kind of have as a mentor, like everybody was saying. So I think those are really the key points in starting out.
Thank you. Thank you. Such good advice. All right. Amber, did they leave you anything?
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. There's always a lot of content when it comes to this topic. But, I came from a military family, a family of people who were fighters, and I'm a fighter too. And, when they did discuss that women in commercial real estate are rare, as Najdi put it. It's more predominantly male. What I would argue is the off-balance sheet mortgage banking world has even fewer women. I mean, there's not that many women originators out there. But the good news is we band together and we're all friends. So we know each other. And Crew, as the other ladies had said, Crew is a great place to meet those other women and to kind of band together. And, I know some folks have mentioned mentors, and mentors are great. I've had so many different mentors. You can hear the kids screaming in the background. But I also think it's important to have alliances and people that can help you across. They may be competitors, but you can talk to them on a confidential basis, and without divulging anything you shouldn't, you can just say, this is the scenario I'm working on. Do you have any suggestions? And 9 times out of 10, people can help each other that way. I would recommend taking people to lunch, taking people to coffee that aren't clients, that are just in the industry, so you can kind of build that network. And I think we've come a long way, and we need to give ourselves a pat on the back. I am with a bank that had one of the first women CEOs of a major bank, Beth Mooney. She retired May 2020, the month and year my daughter was born. I got to have lunch with her in my 3rd trimester in Cleveland right before COVID hit. But I mean, that we should celebrate that, a woman CEO, and we've got a lot of women at KeyBank up the ranks as well. So I think men and women should give ourselves credit for evolving as an industry, but we've got more work to do, and we shouldn't give up now, and let's keep on charging ahead.
Absolutely. Fully agree. Danielle, would you like to round the discussion off?
I will certainly echo all of the sentiments that my colleagues have shared, but one of the things that I would add, and I am a product of this and my career is better for it, is saying yes when the opportunity presents itself. If you would have asked me 12 years ago, would I be sitting in the chair I'm sitting in with the company I'm sitting with, I don't know that I could have seen it, but I said yes along the way, even when I wasn't sure about what that next step was. And so there is power in trying new things, even when you're not sure you're ready for them. And certainly not everyone's life circumstance allows them to be relocatable or, change as nimbly or as quickly or as spontaneously as others. But I would just say, for your personal situation, whatever that next yes is for you, when an opportunity presents itself, don't be afraid to say yes, even if you're uncertain. Because I think commercial real estate can take a lot of different forms, as you can see among the 5 of us. But so much of it is using your most recent experience for your next experience. And I think we're all products of that. And so just being open-minded to whatever the next course of your career might be, even if it's not exactly what you expected.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. I think you've given some really great advice to our students. It got a little heavy towards the end. We're all like determined now. So I want to finish this on a really fun note, we do have a raffle. Amber was so nice to sponsor $50 of an Audible gift card. And as I said at the beginning, we also have a great list of book recommendations that I'm actually going to share with everybody. So if you RSVP'd for this event, then we have your email address and I will send you this recommendation list.
And Sina, one thing I would say is I'm donating this on behalf of Crew as the Crew UTD liaison. So I want Crew to have that credit.
Fantastic. Yes. Duly noted. Duly noted. All right. I have this in an Excel sheet here. Let me click the button. Okay. Drums. Rose. What is your last name? I need to cross check. Rose, are you on the call? Let me see. Yes.
I am. Hi, guys.
Hi. Well, happy winner. We will be sending you, I will actually contact you on your UT Dallas email, but I think that we need to use your private email because I think the UT Dallas system has some antivirus software that won't allow us to send gift cards to you. But I will be in touch with you. And well, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Yep. Thank you.
No.
Thanks, everyone.
Well, this is the time to RSVP for our next event. If you do have some questions for our speakers, we do have a few more minutes. If you want to ask away, if not, just contact me, contact anybody of the Real Estate Club board. And if you want to be in touch with some of our speakers, I'm sure we can arrange for that.
This is Professor Lynch, and I apologize for joining late. I just got out of class, and I wanted to thank my sister crew members for joining us. I've also been a member of crew for 30 years, and I just want to thank you for all your valuable time and input. I was able to hear the last several minutes, and what great advice, and we're so lucky to have you join us and share with our students. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Lynch.
Hello, Sina. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine, Dr. Guttery.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. I thank everybody for joining us. Some of the people on the panel I have taught. Probably most of the students joining us tonight I have taught. Amber Rowe was one of my favorite students years ago. And we just so appreciate all that she's done to be that liaison between Crew and UT Dallas. I did want to share a couple things about how important this all-female panel is to me. That Professor Lynch came on board with me about 3 years ago, and she was the right person for the job. And I made it clear to Julie, I said, you know, in no way are you being hired because you're a woman. You're being hired because you're the best person for this job. And boy, what a great decision that was, because she has taken the reins over the real estate club and some of the other areas that, you know, I just am not able to handle all of these. And I'm just so proud of all the accomplishments she has had in our program. And, you know, maybe I'm naive, but I think at this point, historically, this has been a male-dominated industry, but it is leveling out. There's an analogy I like when I speak to predominantly female groups or students. I like to use an analogy of the NFL, the football league. And, you know, until the 1960s, we had no black players. And then we got a black player, then we got some black players. And then the complaint was, well, we don't have any black coaches. Well, eventually some of those black players either graduated from college or they completed their NFL career, and then they eventually, one got hired as an assistant coach, well, then another one did. Well, then So then we had black assistant coaches. Well, then the complaint was, well, now we don't have any black head coaches in the NFL. And now we have had many, many black female coaches, black quarterbacks of these major league teams. And I just think patience, we're going to get there with women. Is, you know, at one point we had no women. Then we had someone like Kay Cotter come in almost 40 years ago and work with Staubach. And, you know, she blazed so many trails for the younger women today in commercial real estate. And, you know, look at where we are today. By the way,
she was one of the founding members of Crew Dallas, right?
That's exactly right. So I just think over time, this analogy of the National Football League and the black participants is the same thing that's going to happen in commercial. I mean, look at public accounting. 70% of our CPA students are now female. 70%. And again, a few decades ago, that was an entirely male-dominated industry. So, in fact, my daughter personally is a CPA, and I'm very proud of her. So, anyway, I really want to thank y'all again for taking the time to share your time when this is generally family time. You've worked all day, and now you get to spend a little time with your families. So, with that, I thank you all, and I'll turn it over to somebody else.
Thank you, Dr. Guttery. Thank you so much. Well, we do have one quick question in the chat. I don't know who of our speakers wants to speak to that, but the question is from Rowe, our Raffle winner. How did you build your personal brand, and how can we build it to be appealing within the real estate industry? Does anybody have some input for that?
I've got some input. I think the most important part or piece to building a brand is you have to have some experience to point to. So an internship or volunteer work or membership on a committee where you can execute on a project, I think those are things that are going to help you build a brand, and you can reflect that on your resume or LinkedIn or other methods. I've seen folks come out with Instagram pages that were for professional purposes. I was born in the wrong generation for that, but it can be done. So whether it's social media or whatever method.
Fantastic. So have something you can show for yourself, because your personal brand isn't just going to be based off, you know, your school experience necessarily. Thank you, Amber. All right, we do have another question. If we do have more time, a few more minutes. And Rose is again asking, what is one spiritual practice or meditative practice that our panel members use to stay connected to their higher selves? I can imagine a lot of the times it's stressful trying to, you know, combine family and work. Maybe is there something that gets you through the day at the end of the day?
I'll take that one. Rose, that's a great question. And I'm actually going to answer both of yours with this response. But I think that you can build a personal brand based on authenticity with what makes you different when you bring yourself to the table from a commercial real estate perspective. Within the financial services industry, I have a practice that I'm a part of called Elevating Women. And what we do is we educate women at a very delicate point in their lives after divorce or widowhood about what their new financial landscape looks like and offer them a path forward. I feel very connected to that purpose because it aligns both my faith-based desire to do something meaningful in this world and also my professional desire to help people become more educated financially. So when you can reach a point in your career that you have the expertise to authentically deliver something that serves both your passion and your profession, it's a really rewarding combination. I also start my day with a daily devotional, prayer, and then a stoicism book. So it kind of balances intellectual and faith-based thought-provoking moments to start my day before I engage on either a virtual call or an in-person call with a client or prospect. But those are both great questions.
Thank you, Cecily. I believe Nashdi, did you also want to jump in here?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of echo the branding question. You know, for us, I think one of the things that has had impact on our branding is giving back to the community. I feel like anytime we do anything that provides a benefit to someone in our community, for instance, we do a lot of webinars for veterans who are getting to the point of retiring, and then we educate them on commercial real estate, lease agreements, lease documents, what they should watch out for, those kinds of things. And I think, you know, being authentic and actually wanting to give back to a specific group is really how you would, you know, kind of build your brand. And as far as spiritual things, I stretch. For me, stretching is my spiritual thing. So, because I sit, you know, doing, you know, work all the time. So I think for me, like basically taking time to actually stretch is what I do to help myself spiritually.
Fantastic. Great advice. Y'all go do some stretching tonight. All right, we have another question, and Nashti, it's for you. Preston is asking, well, first of all, he thanks you all for your time and your effort. And he was wondering, Nashti, where did you get the courage to financially start your own firm?
You know, it's a good question. I was sort of pushed into that because I worked for GE Capital Real Estate. We had a platform in Los Angeles, and all we did was basically purchase and sell assets, commercial real estate assets. And I was one of the last ones to leave GE because, as you know, they all sold their, you know, commercial real estate division back in 2011. So at that time, I was actually, for personal reasons, moving to Dallas and decided to do some consulting work for some of my former colleagues. And then it just kind of took off from there. And then I decided, well, I'm already doing consulting work. Why not add the brokerage side? Because I was already licensed. And honestly, it's just like I got pushed into it is really the answer. So
that, well, worked out great, it looks to me. Well, and I think as Danielle, unfortunately, she had to log off. She had another commitment. But as Danielle said before, you know, just saying yes to the opportunities that present themselves to you is certainly a factor that plays into this as well. Thank you. All right. Ooh, one more question for Cecily coming in here. Let me read that out loud. You mentioned that you recommend clients hold real estate as like 4 to 6% of their portfolio. If she's not mistaken, it seems like a low percentage. If you could explain that reasoning and what would you recommend for the rest of the portfolio?
That's a great question. And outright, I recognize that it does sound like a really small component, but let me give you a little bit more detail about the clients that we serve. A majority of the clients that I work with are subject to a taxable estate, which means for an individual, their estate value is greater than $11.7 million. Or if they are a married couple, their joint estate value is greater than 23.4%. When we're looking to diversify, we're looking among asset classes, we're looking among ownership structures. We're trying not only to be efficient in the way that they own assets, but the way that they transfer from one generation to the next, so that they can not avoid estate taxes, but be smart about where their money goes upon their passing. 4 to 6% as a component of a diversified portfolio overall is just a guideline. Now, we are not the creators of wealth. We're the preservers and efficient transfers of wealth. So there have been a lot of people that have created their wealth in recurring commercial real estate transactions. They would be the exception to the rule. When I shared the 4 to 6% number, that's for a diversified portfolio who, for someone that I wouldn't classify as a serial commercial real estate investor. Justin, does that help answer your question?
It does, and I have a follow-up question because of that. So for me, in my mind, if I'm planning for estate for multiple heirs, it would seem like a stepped-up basis would be a solution to almost all of that. You know, like no capital gains tax from heir to heir. But I don't know how that would relate to an estate tax. Does that kind of like block each other out? I don't know.
It's a separate tax system. It's a separate tax system, and that's a good question. But a step up in basis isn't the only consideration that I would give with regard to real estate ownership. Again, that's the example of multiple beneficiaries owning a piece of real estate together, one of them wanting to hold it, others wanting to sell and get the liquidity. There are just a lot of factors that kind of compete for the transition efficiently of real estate as an asset class. But the capital gains question and the estate tax question are a good one. They're separate tax systems.
Thanks.
Sure.
Well, thank you, everybody. If there is no more questions, then
Sina, let me ask a question of the whole panel. So I want to know how concerned y'all are if, and we're not going political here, but an unnamed senator from Vermont gets his way, and it's no longer going to be $11.7 million estate exemption per spouse. It's going to be $3.5 million. And if some others writing an unnamed law that might equal $3.5 to $5 trillion, there would go the step up in basis that Justin was speaking about. Capital gains tax rates could be as high as 43.2%. How concerned are you and your clients about the prospect of 1031s being eliminated and all these other things I just mentioned?
I'm not authorized to speak on that, since this is a recorded panel.
absolutely.
I can tell you that we're hearing concerns, but the only certainty in our climate is change. And so you manage through change by planning for it. You can run financial scenarios to show the impact of those changes on an individual portfolio. You can talk through different ownership structure, the timing of when those tax changes would come into play, decisions that can be made now. That legislative policy obviously continues to change. You're obviously very, very well read on it, but that is what a firm like a wealth management firm spends their time researching to try and get ahead of changes and suggesting potential solutions. But we hear concern about it every day.
We also do hear concerns about it every day. We have multiple clients that do 1031 exchanges, and we've been hearing that.
From our clients' perspective, it's a little bit different perspective, them being foreigners, So, I mean, their state tax exemption is, if I'm not mistaken, the incredible amount of $60,000. So, so we try to change, do certain entity structures to, to avoid that from happening here, the state tax. But from a 1031 perspective, same thing. It's interesting. A lot of German investors are very hesitant about a 1031 exchange. They always say, I'd like to pay my taxes now because I know what they are. I do not know what they are in the future. And they're not in, a lot of them do not want to defer, obviously they understand they could defer it for potentially forever, but it's a different mentality for a lot of European investors. They pay their taxes and they're done with it. And if you think about the German tax system, so they think our taxes are really, really low. So, they don't worry about that too much, because they have tax rates that, at the top, is go over 50%, So it's a different mindset, different approach. And obviously for our investors, most of them have, and I can only estimate maybe 10 or 20% of their wealth, invested in the United States. The rest is invested in mostly in Germany or in European countries.
Thank you all.
All right. How about we finish off with this last question, again from Rose. And she's asking, any color of blockchain or crypto making noise in commercial real estate markets in your respective areas? Apparently not.
I'm not hearing much about blockchain or crypto, but I am hearing more about crowdfunding.
Mm-hmm.
And, it used to be when we heard about crowdfunding, you know, I mean, there were certain restrictions on whether it could be part of the organizational structure. There were a lot of concerns, but it's really kind of evolving now to where it almost mirrors a syndicated LP investment, where a lot of the individuals are putting larger sums of money toward the investment. It's not, you know, 3,000 or something. It's something more sizable, and they're accredited investors. So, you know, that is something that I'm starting to see more often and having to get our arms around. And ultimately we can, just as long as it doesn't, certain features are not present.
Right, right. Thank you. It doesn't seem like crypto is too big of raising red flags or boggling really the real estate industry. Not right now. All right, I want to conclude this discussion. I want to thank you again for spending this time with us. I think, as you can see, students are very interested. They're very grateful for your time. And well, I would hope to see you maybe on another panel next year again.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes,
Of course.
thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Sina,
you.
you did a great job planning
Thank
this.
you.
Yes,
Thank you.
did.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, Dr. Guttery. Bye, Julie.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Amber, for your help.